For centuries, ancient Rome stood as the greatest city in the known world. It was the heart of an empire stretching across 3 continents, filled with magnificent temples, crowded markets, towering palaces, and nearly 1 million inhabitants. To many, Rome seemed eternal. But in the summer of 64 AD, everything changed. One terrible night, a small fire began in the city's merchant district. Within days, the capital of the Roman Empire had become a living nightmare. Entire neighborhoods disappeared beneath walls of flame. Thousands fled for their lives. Families were separated forever. Priceless monuments collapsed into ash. And at the center of the tragedy stood one of history's most controversial emperors. Nero. Was he the monster who burned his own city? Or was he simply blamed for a disaster beyond anyone's control? This is the story of the Great Fire of Rome. Rome before the fire. To understand the disaster, we must first understand Rome itself. By the 1st century AD, Rome had become the largest city in Europe. Its streets were alive from sunrise until long after sunset. Merchants shouted prices in crowded markets. Soldiers marched through stone avenues. Senators debated politics while slaves carried goods from every corner of the empire. But beneath this image of glory hid a dangerous problem. Much of Rome was built from wood. Apartment buildings known as insulae rose several stories high. They were packed tightly together with narrow streets between them. Many were poorly constructed and overcrowded. Most homes had open fires for cooking. Oil lamps burned throughout the night. Shops stored cloth, wood, olive oil, wine, and other highly flammable goods. The city was, in many ways, a giant pile of kindling waiting for a spark. The fire begins. On the night of July 18, 64 AD, that spark finally came. Near the Circus Maximus, Rome's enormous stadium for chariot races, flames suddenly appeared among the merchant stalls. Nobody knows exactly how the fire started. Some believed it was an accident. Others suspected arson. Strong summer winds quickly carried burning embers across nearby rooftops. Within minutes, entire blocks were burning. Panic spread faster than the flames. People rushed into the streets carrying whatever they could save. Children cried. Animals ran wildly through the city. Smoke turned day into night. The heat became so intense that stone buildings cracked while bronze statues melted. The fire was no ordinary blaze. It had become unstoppable. 6 days of destruction. For 6 terrifying days, Rome burned. The city's firefighters, known as the vigilas, fought desperately against the inferno. But every time they extinguished one area, the wind reignited another. Witnesses described walls of fire racing through neighborhoods faster than people could run. Many citizens became trapped inside collapsing buildings. Others escaped only with the clothes on their backs. Entire families vanished. Temples dedicated to ancient gods collapsed. Libraries filled with priceless scrolls disappeared forever. Markets that had stood for generations became fields of ash. By the time the flames finally weakened, nearly 3/4 of Rome had suffered damage. 3 districts were completely destroyed. 7 more had been heavily damaged. The greatest city on earth had become a blackened ruin. Emperor Nero returns. At the time the fire began, Emperor Nero was staying in his villa at Antium, about 35 miles from Rome. When news reached him, he hurried back to the capital. Ancient historians record that Nero organized emergency relief. He opened public gardens to homeless citizens. Temporary shelters were constructed. Food supplies were brought into the city. Grain prices were reduced to prevent starvation. These actions saved countless lives. Yet they did little to stop the rumors. People desperately wanted someone to blame. And Nero became the perfect target. Did Nero really play the fiddle? Perhaps you've heard the famous phrase, "Nero fiddled while Rome burned." It is one of history's best-known stories. The problem is, it almost certainly never happened. For one simple reason. The violin or fiddle had not even been invented. Some ancient writers claimed Nero sang songs about the fall of Troy while watching the fire from a safe distance. Others insisted he spent the entire crisis organizing relief efforts. The truth remains uncertain. Much of what we know comes from historians writing years later, many of whom deeply disliked Nero. Separating fact from legend has become nearly impossible. The search for someone to blame. As the smoke cleared, another rumor spread across Rome. Some people believed the emperor himself had ordered the city burned. Why? Because Nero dreamed of rebuilding Rome into a magnificent new capital. Soon after the fire, construction began on an enormous palace called the Domus Aurea, or Golden House. It featured artificial lakes, marble halls covered in gold, gardens, fountains, and a colossal bronze statue of Nero himself. To many Romans, it looked suspicious. Had the emperor cleared space for his dream palace? Or had he simply taken advantage of land left empty by the disaster? No one could prove either claim. The Christians become scapegoats. Facing growing public anger, Nero searched for another explanation. His attention turned toward a small religious group that many Romans already distrusted: the Christians. At this time, Christianity was still a tiny movement. Many Romans viewed Christians as strange outsiders because they refused to worship the traditional Roman gods. Nero accused them of starting the fire. Whether he truly believed the accusation remains unknown. The result was horrific. Ancient sources describe brutal executions. Some Christians were crucified. Others were torn apart by wild animals. Some were reportedly burned alive during public spectacles. These persecutions shocked even some Roman observers. Although historians debate the exact scale of the violence, Nero's actions forever linked his name with cruelty. Rebuilding Rome. Out of destruction came transformation. Rome would never be rebuilt the same way. New building regulations required wider streets. Brick and stone replaced much of the city's wooden construction. Building heights were restricted. Private walls became thicker to slow future fires. Water supplies for firefighting improved. Open spaces separated neighborhoods. These reforms made Rome safer than before. Ironically, one of history's greatest disasters also helped create a stronger city. The legacy of the Great Fire. The Great Fire lasted only days. Its consequences lasted centuries. It destroyed irreplaceable monuments. It reshaped Rome's architecture. It strengthened myths surrounding Emperor Nero. It marked one of the earliest major persecutions of Christians. Even today, historians continue debating the mystery. Did Nero secretly order the fire? Was it an accident? Or was it simply the inevitable result of overcrowded wooden buildings during a hot Roman summer? The evidence has never provided a final answer. What remains is one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Conclusion. When modern visitors walk through the ruins of ancient Rome, it is easy to imagine marble temples and victorious emperors. But beneath those ancient stones lies the memory of one terrifying week. A week when the greatest city on earth became an ocean of fire. A week that changed an empire forever. Whether Nero was villain, victim, or simply an unlucky ruler trapped in catastrophe, his name has become inseparable from the flames of 64 AD. Nearly 2,000 years later, the Great Fire of Rome still burns brightly in history, not through smoke or ash, but through the questions it left behind. Perhaps that is why this story continues to fascinate us. Because sometimes history's greatest mysteries are the ones that can never truly be solved.